Let us not pity the beast, tortured as he is, nor let him off without careful consideration. Let us become thoroughly aware of his origins. Compassion, as I define it, is sensitivity to origins, the genesis of what we perceive. Let us let compassion dismantle him and dismantle his world. Compassion is the throne of every being, God and devil alike, situated in our temple. Compassion is the heart of a unified consciousness. It is, above all beings, an empty throne, where seated is the very mystery of loving awareness. Before God, before man, and before the beast are named. It is the destiny of human existence to rule as this power of compassion. Destiny, after all, is the first child of our origin. We are the temple that is a house of God and a den of thieves. This is the duality of man. But we are children of a non-dual source. Let us know ourselves and evil together in this origin. Let us clear the temple for peace. My name is Frank Taylor. I am, I guess, a philosopher, but above all, I'm a concerned and careful person. I have spent most of my life exploring the depths of consciousness through concept, direct experience, meditation, and extended retreat. And my passion in this moment in history is to bring to the world an understanding not of the material of evil, but of the symbol of evil. And it's a symbol that has lived with humanity for as long as we have history. And this symbol has many flavors, many natures. Call him Lucifer, the beast, the goat, Satan, or the Antichrist. And I want to use this symbol as a means of getting above the polemics which divide us. As Carl Jung incredibly taught us, a symbol is where opposites come to meet. A symbol is both precise and specific. It is also indefinite and open. I conceive of a symbol as a meeting place where meanings hailing from any direction can come to rest, commune, and ultimately house themselves together, almost like a city-state. And I want to use this medium of the internet, but most importantly of my voice, to express, I would say, the necessity of evil. Just as there is light, there must be darkness. And if we are unable to correctly place evil within our worldview, then, as Carl Jung taught us, it will grow in power in our shadow. And as we can see in the world today, it will express that power as the structure of our world and our life. This is, in one breath, both a charge to understand and to see clearly, as well as an invitation to develop the compassionate response to evil, which is the only way, in my view, to actually address it. We don't want to react, we want to respond. and response comes from care. If we cannot look into the heart of darkness with care, we are very much unlikely to find the light again. So, I hope you can join me, and hopefully it's not as dark as the subject matter states. Hopefully we can find some joy as well in this process. So, I'll be reading excerpts from a book I wrote about the Antichrist as an archetype, and I would say it's a piece of integral philosophy. So what that means is that I value equally the conceptual, the personal experiential, the symbolic, and the speculative within my reading. So this book actually came from a direct symbolic experience, similar to the kind of experience Carl Jung would have had before writing his Red Book. If you need context for that, it's an extended, altered state, similar to being in a waking dream, where images, narrative, and concept come together to express truth. In one sense, it's a received text. I did not feel like I authored it, and yet I had to midwife it. I had to put pen to paper and put myself on the line in order to look into what I would call the heart of darkness. But as a good Jungian, all things contain their opposites. So in the heart of darkness, I also see the kernel of eternal light. And to preempt the historical aspects of this work, only at the other end of a true confrontation with the darkness can we recover our inherent divinity, which is the essence of the connected, unified, and loving world I know we all want. So I hope you can come with me on this journey. Recent events in news, let's be direct, the Epstein files in particular, have revealed to us that the structure of power in our world is fundamentally satanic. You can take that literally or symbolically. It gives us a duty and a responsibility to look with clear eyes, because we are all beneath and products of this structure. We all carry, to some extent, its signature. We also carry its pain, its inherent contradictions, and we carry its own desire for liberation. What is abundantly clear is that those in power seek the kind of spiritual liberation that all of us actually, in our heart of hearts, desire above all else. Unfortunately, and this is the central dynamic of the Antichrist symbol, which I will be explicating here, perversion takes over that desire. And so it looks like domination. It looks like the erroneous drive towards synthetic immortality. It looks like the division of the world into those who have and those who have not. But on the spiritual level, that division is those who deserve to be gods and those who deserve to serve the gods. But this comes from a very precise dynamic. The devil was cast out from the heavens. He is a fallen angel. And yet, in my reading of him, he laments what he lost. And though it was his own rebellion that cast him out of the heavenly throngs, and sent him down to earth to play with humanity. The original desire still lives with him. He is an orphan child, and thus he is a child of trauma. And this is our means of finding compassion here, because trauma itself, as the Buddhists taught us, is a cosmic force. We are bound by karma through our relationship with trauma. And indeed, the more we vilify those who act from trauma, the more likely it is we'll propagate a world that lives from trauma. Hence, the real teaching here, the real technology of this work, is compassion as a liberational tool. And as I defined earlier, compassion for me is sensitivity to origins, loving sensitivity to origins. So this will take us historically into the origins of the world we live in today, spiritually into the origins of what it is to be a being in a world at all, what it is to be a soul. And it will also take us into the psychological origins of the ego. Why is it that a soul can fall from itself? Why is it that an angel can fall from God? Naturally, we will be covering sensitive topics. We'll also be covering speculative topics. And we'll be moving in the regions of tradition, religious tradition specifically. And these are the guarded truths of humanity. So I want to begin with a caution. I might break from tradition and canon at times. I may cast familiar symbols in new light. But this comes from a core affirmation, and actually a recognition of the definition of God. God is the totality and the specificity of all being. By definition, the infinite cannot be other than every finite thing. Insofar as we take that to be true, everything is sacred. And insofar as we recognize the mechanism of becoming is change, nothing is sacred. We will hold this with reverence, with lightness and creativity, because to find new ways to digest our situation as a human species, we need to take what is familiar and turn it into the foundation of a novel way of being. So I will be covering over Christ, the Father, the principle of nature, the principle of inversion. I'll be talking about the essence of Christianity and, following Carl Jung's Aeon, the theory that we live within a Christian epoch, now in its deficient anti-Christian phase. And I'm speaking not as a Christian. I'm speaking as one who knows and loves being. Simple as that. If we are going to get out from underneath our own conceptions, we must be willing and brave enough to augment them. And if we're going to augment them, we have to do so from a loving understanding of their origins, of their source. Where is it that these ideas that we wear as our identities actually come from? Because if we're going to identify with anything at all, I think it's a good idea that we get a sense of what gave birth to that. The key notion, and it's somewhat cryptic, is that everything is everything. This comes from the Kashmiri Shaivite school, a tantric school, and it's a profoundly rich, deep, and simple notion. Everything is everything. We'll be unpacking it over the course of a number of videos. But in essence, the fact that everything is everything means we cannot extricate ourselves from the collective situation. Our circumstance, our about world, as the German phenomenologist would have called it, is a shared circumstance. We live contextually bound to one another. In Buddhism, they call this pratitya samutpada, codependent origination. Everything, to be itself, is defined by and against everything else. And so, for us to define a world we actually want to live in, we actually have to define it against the world we don't want to live in. Hence the focus, indeed, is on the darkness. Only insofar as the darkness will help us define and outline the true nature of love and light. As you might be able to tell, paradox is central to my way of thinking. And the symbolic form is what allows paradox to become coherent again. I believe all truth bears the signature, the mark of paradoxicality. And in my opening remark, an excerpt from the book itself, I speak to this. We have a non-dual source. What that means is that what language divides in order to make sense and express reality is, before it's spoken, a unified whole. The core dynamic there is subject and object. This is the psychological essence of the ego, is the split between the subject and the object. And indeed, this is where the Antichrist finds his most fertile ground, where we have been divorced from the unity of our own experience. Because what is it in your experience right now that persists as true? That you are both the individual seeing and living in the world, and you are that through which any world can be made known and livable. Without you and your particular consciousness, there is no object of the world. I'll be defining quite a few new words, neologisms. This is part of what I mentioned earlier as a means of moving into a new space of conception. If we cannot play with language, play with ideas, and find within that lost understanding, we will never be able to extricate ourselves from the mental binds which come with a world of darkness. There's a reason why it feels like we can't quite talk to each other at the moment. Because our words have lost the foundational meaning, the foundational coherence, which our etymology actually reveals to us. And again, our words have crystallized and hardened into the expressors of duality. And as such, our words have become unfit to express the truth. So I'm going to read now again from the text. And this is a passage on the symbolic contemplation that I would like to offer you as a means of understanding and metabolizing the knowledge we now have about how our world is structured. A good living symbol has limitless depth. an endless capacity to be meaningful, precisely because it is empty of a fixed essential meaning. The outflows of its significance are so many streams, trickling or rushing back to the living significance which apprehends its conscious presence. The true symbol seeks and invites true presence because to the present one, it is a transient community of meanings, a manifestation of that one's manifold, interconnected creativity, which is both grounded in truth and ever-changing in appearance. The symbol is no fixed abode, a given and ever-true signification, but rather an active sight, beckoning to meanings from far and wide to come and build, deconstruct and reconstruct, to transact and do business with one another, to cohabit, flirt, commingle, procreate, and move on. A symbol is a hub, like the empty heart of the wheel of presence, of consciousness itself, an active particular, yet nothing in particular, a non-thetic presence outlined in pure negation. In this way, just with one symbol to contemplate, one may invite the entire cosmos into one's neighborhood. And let's sing all of life in but one meager cell. So it is that via the emptiness of just one true symbol, we may approach the fullness of signification, of true understanding. So it's the case that to know one thing, all things must be known. And thus to know one thing, to know it truly, may bring all knowledge to one's threshold. And yet, that fullness returns to emptiness to preserve the fertility of the vessel, and the cycle of understanding culminates around. What is born of this ebb and flow is the knowing of living, which must be lived to be known, for it is only knowing that ebbs, and only life that flows. So this is what we're going to be doing with the symbol of the Antichrist. We are going to let it ebb, and we will flow with it. Because really, when we're talking about anything archetypal, we are at once speaking of something that is a personal dynamic as much as a collective dynamic. Hence, we can invite every register from psychological to historical to factual to emotional. And this is necessary, in my view. So I'm going to get slightly technical here and use some philosophical language to explain three main layers which most of these episodes will follow in terms of the content. The first is the ontology, which simply means the understanding of being. What is the being of the Antichrist? We've pointed to the archetypal nature, but for everyone watching, that meaning of the word archetype may be different. Actually, it necessarily will be different. So we're going to have to define what we mean by archetypal, as well as what archetypal being this Antichrist image really has. We'll pair that with the historical, because as we've been saying, we live in a time where this abstract image actually is concretely felt in the events of the world. And the final addition to this is the empirical, how it is to live and know this image and this history as a being. Because we're all living in it, we all live as it, and we all carry with us the very clear sense, I think, that something needs to change. But this need for change is simply the creative process of life living through us. The vision that underlies change is what I would like to help bring to fruition. Invariably, when we speak of good and evil, we tend to divide the world into heroes and villains, victims and perpetrators. I'd like to avoid this, if possible. If we really follow to its logical conclusion the notion of compassion as loving sensitivity to origins, then blame disappears into the infinite regress that ends at the transcendent source of all life. That's not to say we don't adequately account and respond to the transgressions of certain peoples. But ultimately, we are all products of a single, and I would say divine, play. We are not, well, let me put it this way. None of us have absolute knowledge. What makes the world tick is our ignorance. And in between the dark spaces of our ignorance live some of the more profound mechanisms of history. It's more what we don't know that makes things move. And so I'd like to apply this universally, even to those who, it may seem from our perspective, have lost their hearts. Because if we are going to heal, we cannot propagate trauma. And this is a refrain I'll be coming back to again and again. It's so tempting to blame, to throw hatred back at those who have hurt us, who have betrayed us. But temptation is the primary mechanism of the devil, of the Antichrist archetype we're talking about. To be tempted into this hatred is to return to the mechanisms which cause the cultural and historical conditions that we are trying to overcome. So there's a bravery in compassion, and also a self-restraint. This is why I speak to you as much as an individual, as a world, because there's an element of this which is about us finding new dimensions of ourselves. How can we hold darkness and not seek to destroy it, but seek to understand it instead? I'm going to give you, as a closing note, the central image of my work. And this image, funnily enough, it came to me when I was about 19 years old, and it stuck in my mind like a painting. And I can call on it at any point and just see it emblazoned in my soul. In the center of the image is a hermit, a hooded figure, both arms outwards. In his right hand sits a baby. In his left, he holds a demon attached to a chain. He stands on a checkerboard floor, which extends behind him towards an active volcano. And on right and left, we have different qualities of the sky and the fields behind this character. On the right-hand side, we have the light and the sun and the flourishing of the fields. And on the other, we have smoke, cloud and darkness, fields running fallow. It's an image of our duality. Every being is as much evil as good. But our spiritual traditions teach us the middle way. And the image of the hermit holding both is one who has learned to carry and wield this duality in a unified way. The checkerboard floor reaching towards the volcano is an image of the chessboard of life. In a certain way, life is a game. In another sense, life has been gamified by the elites, and we are pawns in that game. It's not a nice image, and it's somewhat trite, but there's a truth in it. But the checkerboard floor speaks also to masonry, and within that tradition, the checkerboard is the equal play of light and dark, an expression of that middle way. And it's in ourselves that we walk this checkerboard dance. One moment we are light, in another moment we are dark. How we harmonize, that is where wisdom comes in. And at the far end of this checkerboard walkway is the active volcano, the image of pure, natural, earthbound creativity, but also the explosion and expansive power of fire itself rising from the core of the earth. And this is a symbol for what happens to us, the power that we can wrest from nature itself if we are to walk that road. The good people of the world, I think, know the image of goodness. We know what innocence is, the baby in the right hand. And we instinctively go towards this image of innocence and goodness, truth and light, because it is warm enough for us to grow within. The cold, frigid depths of darkness and shadow we naturally are averse to. But I would like to bring these two images, these two sides, into equal understanding, equal vision, to bring parity, enough that we can find the middle way. And like I said earlier, the paradox is that we actually will find a new form of light within that search for the darkness. And now I'd read one final passage to close off this first inaugural video. And I take the essence of this passage from a Taoist phrase, which is, a good man is a bad man's teacher. A bad man is a good man's job. Certainly it is true. A good man is a bad man's teacher. A bad man is a good man's job. But the good in man is in need of learning, and only the bad in man can provide the necessary tuition. Good intuition is so badly needed. For if a good man is to come into a fluent expression of his curriculum, he must study his poorly brother, who as yet is held in his long shadow. Who of goodness these days is willing to look into the depths of the heart of evil itself? We have come to know the many expressions of human evil through the approbating course of our late history, coming to taste and bitterly swallow the regrettable extents to which man has been able to inflict suffering upon his fellows. And though we have overcome those acute episodes of fascism and totalitarianism which leer at us from the all too short distance of recent history, we are yet to expiate the spirit of evil as it pertains to the potentialities that fester in the human heart, awaiting ripe and loathsome conditions. It seems those conditions have found their maturity. This is so because we are, despite many a desire to claim otherwise, at one with the root of that evil. And this is evident in the fact, revealed in the last half decade, that we as a contemporary global public are largely insensitive to and uninformed about the psycho-spiritual origins of atrocity. And evil regimes and the episodes of madness which peddle these regimes. These origins are, reductively speaking, the conditions of loneliness, alienation, meaninglessness, and anxiety. And they come hand in hand with a world run by the banalizing force of institutions enshrined by a base and arbitrary will to power. We, the self-proclaimed goods, have not made good on the duty we hold to this accolade of moral valence, but rather, for the most part, have opted for the pursuit of the good life. That most enduring distraction that hums with the resonances of banality and arbitrariness. That most tantalizing temptation offered to the middling soul, appealing to our better nature's tendency to weakly wish away difficulty, discomfort, and darkness. As we do this, we also turn away the feedstock of growth itself. The image and promise of the good life is perhaps the most profound work of the serpent's tongue. From the good life to goodness itself, Plato's the good. How do we make this movement? So alluring is the simple aspiration to live well, and we are unaware that to some degree the well is tainted. The well has had the skeleton of humanity's ills dumped into it, hidden within it, and from the inside has become contaminated, making odious the waters drawn from it. What chiefly contaminates the well, however, is the corpse of true wellness, true goodness, which is a body kept alive by a humanity unaware of its collective heart. It's not an isolated individual project, for humanity's heart should be unifying of heaven and earth, and thus it should regulate with its rhythms the project of unified cosmic beauty. When we seek the good life, we seek to wrest a shard of that beauty, and we fail to see that the goodness of life is something that has to be shared and must apply universally. And this echoes the fall, because Lucifer fell from heaven with a shard of the divine beauty. And yet, he could not make a world beautiful. It's clear that we cannot rest contented, nor seek to, as the good would have it, because the tension between good and evil once again calls our attention. Louder by the day cries this call. The real courage I ask of you is to open yourself. Put yourself in that space where your knowledge isn't perfect,